Hi guys and gals, it's Pete, Mindwiseman's channel, aka Maverick Outdoors, and it's now the end of March 2016, and I've returned to the location that I did the first brief review highlighting the new Maverick Explorer canoe. And today what I'm going to do is give a video speccing some features on the Maverick Explorer number 2, which I received last week, which is packed away in a different sort of bag. Bullet point video, bit of vox pops highlighting some of the features of the canoe, just straight to the point, featuring some of the aspects of the new canoe that I've just received, number 2. So here you can see the drop stitch floor inflated, which is 100mm thick, near enough 4 inches, and it inflates up to 10 psi, which is 10 times more stable than my Sevillor Colorado's floor. And literally you could take it out on coastal waters and use it as a bodyboard, not necessarily surfboard, because obviously you haven't got the right contours for it, but it's the same materials that inflatable surfboards and stand-on top boards for paddling are actually made of. So that's the stability, and it's removable. You can take it out. So if you need to get to the underhull of the actual canoe itself for repairs or anything like that, just to check it out, it's always good to do checking maintenance every now and again. Of course you can take it out, so yeah, all good stuff. Now for the side chambers, which can inflate up to 3 psi, compared to my Sevillor Colorado, which was only anything from 0.5 to 1 psi maximum. So there's the stability that actually comes from using the Desitex triple layer system chambers. But before I go any further, what I'd like to state at this particular time is that I'll be doing a full review on the ordering facilities, the admin process, all that sort of thing, and the pricing, because I've still got negotiations to sort out. But I'll be giving you a few specs just to sort of give you a taster as to this is going to be the final model with a few amendments to it, which I'll tell you about in a little while. Also notice the hand pump comes with an inbuilt tropical bird sound device. Only joking. But if you want to be a bit more stealth and clandestine, you just pump a little bit slower and there's no noise coming from the air pressure going through the valve at the end of the tube. Now for the other one. And these high pressure pumps, which actually are specifically made within the valve structure and the O-ring seal, which blocks the air and pushes it through. These are just so much easier to use. As you can see, there's no resistance there whatsoever, but of course when the pressure starts to come back, and I know it's getting to the pressure I need it to inflate to, then that's when you start to feel a bit of pressure resisting. Then you know that you're getting nearer to the pump up level and its fullest inflation. Okay, so these Halki non-return valves, so that means once the air goes in, the valve inside stops it from coming back out, so every time you pump and put air in, it obviously inflates the canoe. I'll be giving more of a full tutorial as to the whys and wherefores behind these valves, because there's specific thing one needs to know as to, once the cap comes off, the spring-loaded valve in here, and of course the two side chambers. If I undo that, you can see the spring valve. Now if I press it, it releases some of the air, but there's two different ways of turning this to release the air so the chamber deflates, and also setting it to another position so that when you put the tube in, it actually inflates and then the non-return valve actually works. But if you don't set it properly, you can take this out when you think you've finished inflating it and all the air will come back out. But if you already use inflatables that use the Halki valve system, then you're going to know about that. But as I say, I'm going to do a full tutorial as to how you can load the canoe, pumping it up, how the valves work and all that sort of thing. So you can see the floor has got a wood grain effect to it. Obviously you can see where the stitching, the drop stitch floor, which I'll now give you an actual image of how it's actually structured and made. So that's the sort of zigzag effect because of the drop stitch that's going down to the underside of this floor. But the surface, I requested when these were being manufactured to actually have a wood effect rather than it being camo, because if you drop anything on the floor, the plainer the colour, the easier it is for you to see it. So the actual end shape as well is going to be amended, where it's actually going to taper a little bit more, not to sort of like a curve, but a little bit more of an oval point either end, and the same this end. But this just being a sample test, and you can see this one's got a stop end, a straight end, but that's the drain valve, so it unscrews, any water in it, at the end of the day you can just tip it out and drain it out. But this is going to be moved further underneath there, further at the end. So if you imagine, it will sort of be about this point, but actually on the floor. So then this inflatable drop stitch floor is going to be more curved, so it can set into the shape of the bow and the stern of the canoe. So I hope that makes sense, but I will actually explain it even more on the full review video, which will eventually, when I do it, include how you can go about ordering the canoe, the price and all that sort of thing. But all these things are still in negotiations because of course I'm still amending the canoe. So we've got two hold-on carry handles at either end. A technique that you'd use if two people were carrying it. One would be to the left, one would be to the right, so you can see I'm to the right of the bow of the canoe, someone else would be at the stern, but on the other side, rather than both being on the same side, so it's not lopsided when you're carrying the canoe. But that's a technique, again, I can highlight at a later date. Notice the tug rope, you could also hold it from this end, so it's got two aspects of holding, but you'll notice the tug ropes along the edge are different from what I classified as canoe number 1, which had an actual rigid protrusion with eyelets, just like this photograph now I'm going to show you. But as you can see, it's inserted along the edge, specially made so the holes can actually thread the tug ropes through, and I've decided to actually have D-rings so I could actually see the difference. And I think D-rings work much better than the solid strip because it folds easier, and providing you get the fold of the canoe, when you saw me unwrap it earlier, the folds were either side of the D-rings, so the D-rings stay flat. So that was all the method to the design and the practicalities of what I wanted. So as you can see, you can grab the canoe from any position. If you're in the water for whatever reason and you need to hold on to the canoe, you can also strap bits of kit. Again, I'll be giving a tutorial on that at a later date. So I'm just unscrewing the drain plug here, which actually is a Boston valve. I'll just stick my finger through. That's the grass of the ground underneath there. There are plugs that you can actually insert, but I prefer a screw valve because at least then you know it's solid and there's no chance of it being pushed out from underneath. Bit pedantic, but me being a perfectionist, I wanted a screw cap, so once it's screwed in, it's nice and solid. But I'll be talking about actually self-bailing holes, which I know would probably be a bit request and an inquiry from a lot of people that are into paddling the rapids and that sort of thing. But I've decided not to actually have self-bailing holes in this canoe at the present time, which would normally be in the floor, underneath the drop stitch floor or whatever sort of top surface you've got, and it'll be along the edges, say round about every 2 foot along. So you might have anything from 6 to 8 along either side, self-bailing holes. And the self-bailing holes could either stay open or they'll have non-return valves, but that obviously adds to the expenditure, and not a lot of people would maybe want to use the canoe on rapids. So I'm trying to make this as versatile as possible, but of course there is an improvisation that people can do for themselves and actually make their own self-bailing holes, but again I'll tell you about that another day. Here you can see you've got the protective strake along the outer circumference, so just place that down. I'll come around the other side. Obviously there's 2 protective strakes along both edges. So if you moor up to a bank, that protects scuffing. And then this is resistant, this is abrasive resistant, chemical resistant, the chambers. There's a layer of high specification PVC either side of what's sandwiched in between a polyester mesh weaving, which I'll now show you a still of. Which gives the canoe its robustness, and as you can see I'm straddling, 1 foot's on one chamber and I'm bouncing up and down, and I'll tell you what, you wouldn't be able to do that or last for long if that was the Sevillor Colorado, which is obviously just one membrane of PVC. This is 3 times thicker, each chamber. Actually, I think I'll stay here for a few minutes, this is quite good fun. So back to the D-rings and the tug rope, you've got 5 D-rings along the top edge, either side with the tug rope. Those D-rings you can fasten carabiner cords, bungee cords, anything to fasten your kit if you've got it loaded on either end or the centre. And then the ones on the inner side are actually for the seats. You can seat up to 3 people in this canoe. Again, I'll request your patience just to bear with me, because at a later date I'll be showing you, as I said before, the whole spec. So you might be asking me questions now, but a lot of the answers to your questions are actually going to be in this video, so bear with me. The canoe comes in at 4 metres, so 13 foot. And you'll notice the width is a little bit more than your normal inflatable canoe that would normally stop about here and just about have the right width to just about insert a kayak seat or a canoeing seat. So here you can see I've set up the seat in the middle because obviously I'm going to be solo paddling, and I've got equal weight that's going to be in front of me, 1 bag in front, it's only a bit of light kit stuff over there, and then another bag behind me, so that the weight is equally distributed. Now if you had 3 people in here, you'd have the same seat in round about the same position, but then you could have the rear seat here, but obviously you'd have to shorten these straps, make them much shorter, so this black back clip, and by making these straps shorter it obviously reduces the distance from the backrest to where the clip is here, which you then fix on these 2 parts. You'd be seated here, the small strap, or should I say the shortened strap in front, although I've elongated it here because it's relevant to me paddling solo in the middle. But otherwise you can actually shorten the strap, so basically you can have 1 seat there in between those 2 rings, the seat central here, and then the front seat to the bow in between those 2 rings, so you've got a seating position here, seating position there, seating position there. And the spec of the carry weight of this canoe at the moment is 300 kilograms. So you could load this up, equally distribute the weight, and that's going to carry at least 300 kilos. So for 3 average people and a little bit of kit, or 2 people and loads of expedition kit, This has really got a practical use and purpose. Hence the reasons behind the spec and design that I've chosen over the past 6 months. You'll notice here there's 2 insert loops along the top of the gunnel for 2 marine grade benches. Reinforced plywood with a marine grade covering, which can go here and also here for tandem paddling. So as you can see, I'm just sitting on it normal, just with sort of my feet in front. Obviously that would be looped through, or should I say inserted through the loops either side, but also you can change the technique for more traditional, where you can see I've just cut my legs off. Obviously I've tucked them underneath the bench, which obviously is a different sort of technique for kayaking and canoeing. Some people prefer to sort of kneel, but if you've got dodgy knees then you might not want to be in this sort of position. And I'm going to show you how strong it is. I'm going to stand on it. Okay, so why did I choose to have the insert loops for the transom bench on top of the gunnel? There's a lot of high spec canoes out there which actually have the transom seat sort of slightly inserted, and they have a protrusion, sort of an adhered little piece of flexible bracket that you actually rest the transom bench on. So if you imagine, instead of it being there, it would be set on the little ridge which will be moulded on the slightly lower than the top edge of the gunnel inner side, and it would rest there, but obviously the bench would be shorter, say cut here, and rest on the other little piece of flexible bracket. But the problem is, well, it's not really a problem as such, it's just a different way of actually setting a transom bench into the canoe, but it lowers the distance down to the floor, so it's a little bit less room for you to actually tuck your legs in underneath if you wanted to. Plus, with the particular canoes with this sort of design, where the transom seat is slightly inserted down inside the canoe, it's normally screw fixed, or there's some sort of little gizmo that needs to fix it. And if it doesn't fix, then it's going to slide around and move and be insecure. Now, if you do lose these little grommets, screws, fixings, which tend to actually be separate, if you lose them, you've got no way of fixing them. So I just thought, at least you've got equal distribution of weight, and I personally think it's stronger with the distribution of weight being actually on the centre either side, and it's just slid through the loops. You've got more distance underneath to actually bend your knees if you're doing that type of kneeling canoeing, and you've got no chance of losing any little bits of gizmo to actually fasten the actual benches. What I will be doing is requesting for the actual eventual model manufacturer to probably have another loop somewhere here, sort of in line with the backrest, so if you're paddling on your own you would have this roundabout central to the canoe, just like I want to paddle on the seat central to the canoe, so it's equally balanced within the weight distribution along the length of the canoe. If you're limited to here and you didn't have much kit, there's a chance of the bow tilting up just slightly, obviously because gravity, you've got more weight one end, so it's like a set of scales. You know, it stands to reason by default that's going to happen, but you want as equal weight distributed as possible. So the nature to having a third middle loop for one of the transom benches, you'd be seated round about where that seat is now, but instead of the backrest you'd actually have the bench. So again, if you're visually focused on interpreting it, I'll just place it here roundabouts, and you can see that's about central, because even if it's slightly set back from the centre line, your momentum is slightly distributed forward from paddling and all your momentum going forwards. So even if the bench isn't quite central, slightly back from these D-rings there and there. So that's an addition that I'm actually going to have applied. I'll tell you about the kit that's going to come with it in a moment. I'm also going to request either 1 or 2 eyelets here, exactly like those, and one at the end here. So any bits of kit you want to mount, I'll give you a demo of my kit bag the other end. So any small little items that you want quick access to can just be under there, sort of simple little things. It might be your drink bottle, especially if it's sitting at the front, just simply to get into. But this is strong enough to carry some kit, not just that rucksack. It's as limited as your imagination, literally, so you might even have some kit sort of coming back here as well, actually on the deck of the floor, but you might want to keep a bag separate, as like mine is there. But it's fastening it, so you can get bungee cords, hook them on the end, bring them over, hook them there, take them across. So there's all different aspects besides using the tug ropes if you wanted to actually get part of the fastening. So the tug ropes have got two purposes all around the canoe, the whole way round of it. I've got two purposes, literally as handles or to fasten kit with bungees, bits of paracord, looping it over, all that sort of thing. Imagine your kit's down there, you want to fasten it so you can loop all your fastenings. So it's all as versatile as possible. So here's the other one. Place the paddle along there, it fits in, and just velcro it, and where my fingers are, that's where the paddle is. So if you're a fisherman, fisherwoman, and you want to do a bit of spot fishing in the middle of a lake, and you stand on the canoe just doing your fly fishing, throwing the line out, then of course you might just want to keep the paddle out of the way from the floor and adhere it to the side with the paddle straps. So over 12 months ago, when I came up with some of the initial designs and sort of the versatility of what I wanted from the canoe, if you apply every single little gizmo gadget, like a shelter basher, a sun canopy sort of to go over the top, all that sort of thing, a lot of people might not actually want to use it for that. A lot of people might just want to use it literally as an expedition canoe, leisurely canoe. Some people might want to use it for fishing. It can at the moment take up to level 3 rapids, but that's not to say that you might be actually safe. It's down to your ability and your knowledge of how to deal with paddling in white waters. So even though at the moment it will do a level 3 rapid, it's not got the self-bailing holes which level 3 rapid canoes and anything above that would normally have. But a lot of people use hard shell canoes that have not got any bailing holes. So, you know, it'd be sort of like comparable to that. Now obviously this doesn't track as maybe as direct as a hard shell by the nature of the beam, which is the width. The canoe weighs, it just comes up at just over 23 kilos, which for the materials at 23 kilos is very light. My Sevillor came in at sort of about 18, but because it had a nylon canvas hull that covered it, which was absorbent, but the protection of the nylon canvas hull on the canoe that I've been using since 2008 protected a weak PVC, just single membrane bladder, which was actually a third of the thickness of the chamber of the Maverick Explorer. So for its robust practicality, it had to have, as a lot of single thin skin membrane PVC bladders have, they have a nylon canvas or synthetic canvas hull that actually covers it. Now obviously this hasn't, because it's got the weaving inside, which makes it nice and stable. So the fact of the matter with single membrane plastic PVC inflatable canoes, they inflate like a balloon. So if you don't stop inflating them, they'll just keep expanding. Whereas the difference with this, because if you imagine my hand is like the weaving fabric, the PVC's on top and there's a piece underneath sandwiching it, it creates a stability where it doesn't lose its shape. So it really functions similar to a car tyre. A car tyre you can inflate, you can keep inflating it, but the actual volume and shape of it doesn't expand, but the pressure actually builds up inside, and that's what gives it its stability. It's exactly the same with this, and this is a totally different ball game to what I've been using with the Sevillor Colorado, or anyone that would be using just a single membrane plastic inflatable canoe, which of course makes it a little bit more expensive. But with the negotiations I'm still sort of putting in place, and hopefully they're going to be finalised by the end of April, so all ordering facilities will be ready, the price, all the details and the full review, and I hope to take it out on coastal waters as well, will all be available before the end of April. And if you know your inflatable canoes, and I'm not going to say any well-known names, global leaders in inflatable canoes, you're going to know a canoe of this specification is going to be very expensive. But I guarantee you this, with all the kit that you're going to get with this, which is going to be 2 fins that can go in either when you inflate it or when it's deflated. You can put 1 in or 2. It will have a repair kit with a solvent, 3 patches, and also a spanner device which can replace these valves. And sometimes over a period of time, if they do get loose, you can take the topper off, which actually seals it, and yet you apply it in and actually replace the valves as well. But more about that at a later date. 2 of these seats, high back, reinforced, very good quality kayak canoeing seats. 2 of these paddles. This unscrews, they come apart, the paddle ends come apart. The strength of this is from the insert goes right into here, so this makes it very stable. And 2 of these benches. So it's 2 benches, 2 paddles, 2 seats, 2 fins, high pressure pump, high performance pump, repair kit. Thanks, and I'm going to get a load of questions, so hopefully this video briefly has answered a lot of the questions. But as you can see from what I've explained and described and what you've seen from the features on the Canoe, the Versatility is for fishermen, leisurely paddlers, adventurists, expedition canoeing, bushcrafters, bit of survival prepping. There is a potential in the near future to get high-vis red. I've had a few inquiries from some emergency services as such, or people that are concerned about the floodplains they live on. You know, we had the floods in the UK, were flooded out sort of head height in water, and it's only just started to recede now, and that was a few months back. So, you know, even a canoe like this can help for people to have to bug out if their houses and homes are flooded, all that sort of thing. Of course, that's last resort, but you know, if we're talking good times, leisurely times, I wanted to have a canoe that had all the versatility. Because the problem I found was that even with world-renowned canoe makers, inflatable canoe makers that have been established for many years, there might be one feature on it. I thought, oh, that's great. But then I would look at it and go, well, actually, but I would like it like that as well. So there might have been sort of like across transom benches going across, as I'm looking actually down now, and I've already explained to you guys. It might not have had enough D-rings. If it had enough D-rings, then it had no place to actually put the bench. So how could you secure the transom bench? So for about 12 months at least, so this project's been over 2 years, but over the past 12 months, you know, I tried to look at every single canoe I could, and I thought there's no canoe out there that actually caters for everything that you actually want to use it for. So I've gone for the extra long fins for extra tracking. So if you're in sort of flat waters, but you're getting broadsided by the wind, then at least it gives you a little bit more tracking. And they slide in there. So the fin simply slides into the insert. There's a little security plug, but actually that's that rigid. Just bring that further along. That marries up to that hole, and there you can see you've got quite a good depth. So when you get broadsided by the wind, this acts as a resistance in the water. And of course, one at the bow, or you can just keep it single. And of course, the nature of the hull, it does actually scoop up from the front and end bow stern beam, which actually does help cut into the water and track a little bit easier. But the whole nature of sort of inflatables of this type tend to have obviously the flat floor, whereas hard shells can actually have a little bit more of a sort of a V shape, which actually cuts into the water. But there's a little bit less, I'd say, my experience with inflatables, there's about sort of 25% less tracking ability in an inflatable, but that's what you get. You know, you've got the convenience of the inflatable rolling up, putting in the boot of your car, save space, that sort of thing. So it's sort of pros and cons for both things. But of course, an inflatable is a different sort of ball game to actually having a hard shell. And of course, some people are not into inflatables, so obviously it's down to personal choice. But of course, here is a very good quality multi-purpose canoe. One final spec on its construction. Where the pieces of PVC are cut to shape, so obviously the sort of triangle shapes, and then where it has to be seamed, hopefully you can see it here, but these seams are actually overlapped. So they're not butted together, sort of two edges butted and then seamed like the Sevelaw is, which when it inflates can pull apart, and I've had loads of pinhole leaks. Whereas this, one piece overlaps the other, it's sealed underneath and then it's sealed on top. So there's actually three aspects to actually this being seam sealed. One piece overlaps, it's stuck together, then this seam is actually adhered over the top of where it's overlapped. So here's a little diagram. And of course, wherever there's any overlapped seams to seal the joins, you can see there's another one there, another one just here. So they're triple sealed. You can see where it tapers at the end, and the two pieces that make this tapered section are bonded together. You can see it comes along here, but then of course this section has to be bonded to the main chamber along the horizontal broadside. So of course it's the same thing, overlapped and then stripped over the top, which is much more secure than some inflatables, and a lot of very reputable global leaders will actually just butt the edges together and then seam on top, if that makes sense. So now that needs to get in there. Okay guys, you can see I'm actually standing on the canoe, just turning round. So if you were spot fishing or just needed to stand up, the canoe's not bowing in the middle. The weight is staying really level. So that's the difference with a drop stitch floor. High performance, stand on top. That's how sturdy it is. Okay, so I decided to do a bit of a U-turn and see how the canoe would manage. Knowing the water would be safe enough to come up here, although there's been warnings on certain navigations, especially around the south of England, due to heavy downpours of rain sort of upsetting the flood levels and creating a stronger current. So I thought I'd just give it a little bit of a test going against the current, because it's flowing sort of this way and I've just come up this way. And you can see from left to right, going downstream, the flow is about the speed of what you'd be paddling on still waters. So in principle it's a bit like paddling against the current. So we're going along paddling as if you're walking up an escalator that's going downwards, so you stay stuck in the middle. But of course this new Maverick Explorer is much longer than the Sevelaw Colorado, which is about 10.5 foot. This is coming up to 13 foot, so it's about 2.5 foot longer. Plus as well it's a little bit more, slightly more weighty, but only because of the size. If the Sevelaw Colorado, which I've been used to since 2008, which a lot of you sort of followed my adventures and travels since watching my wild camps and canoeing on YouTube. I would say if the Sevelaw was this size, it would be just as heavy. But of course, yeah, of course you get splashback. It's the nature of paddling in an inflatable and because of the circular chambers. But the beauty of this is that you can wipe it down and it dries straight away. You haven't got to wait for the nylon canvas hull that protects the thin PVC chamber, and it doesn't sort of discolour or get sort of bad aromas and that sort of thing. So this is even more hygienic and sort of cleaner. And of course, not having a canvas cover, it won't absorb all the water and stay soaking wet, and then be more weight to carry when you're portaging or sort of like walking around. But now I'm going to just enjoy this bit of sunlight. It's coming up to about, looks like 6:30 in the evening. I've got about another hour and a half of daylight, so I'll just stay out on the waters for about another half an hour. So I hope you've been able to digest some of the information in this sort of intro to the Maverick Explorer #2, and I think this is going to be the model that the future models that are going to be available to the public and go on the market is going to be based on this one. But I've got a flask in there with tea and a yummy, yummy biscuit. I lie. A biscuit or two, a nutty muesli bar, and a minty choc digestive biscuit. Bring it on. Yummy. Cheers. This is what it's all about, and you can't really capture anything like this unless you're actually out there, in it, on the waters. Maverick to the max. Okay, so I've sat back down in the seat after using the bench. I'm now actually going with the flow. I'm not even paddling, and you can see I'm moving along. That direction is over to the weir. She's a little bit worse for wear. Famous one-handed paddling. Bird song, coming to the evening chorus as the sun goes down, and there's always that aroma on the river. It's like a mixture of freshly cut grass, freshly done washing, smell of soap, just an overall smell of nature, which you can only really get being on the water. There's something about the water that changes the air, the dampness, the whole effect of the air around you, which makes the aromas totally different and very moorish, I must say. Right, I'm coming to a bridge up there, which I've got a duck underneath. Second World War riverside pillbox, homeland defence during the Second World War in case England was invaded. laying down on the job. Okay, so I'm just going to unload the canoe, pack everything away, and then get on the move before it gets dark. So I've just got enough daylight now. But it was a good test out on the canoe. So it may not look it, but this old current has really picked up even over the past half an hour. I noticed it on the paddle back. Lucky enough I was coming downstream, but I could really feel the difference. So, you know, you've always got to be aware of your waters and your ability within the canoe. Many people have left comments on the previous video to this one when I featured the number 1, and then lots of still pictures of this canoe that I've used today. And of course this is a follow on from that to actually establish that actually this is going to be the model that the Maverick Explorer is going to be based on, what you've seen today in this video. So I'll keep you updated with all new information, which is basically going to be the details of when it goes on the market, the price of it. But I can guarantee you the price of this canoe with all the features and all the kit, the starter package you're going to get with it, the versatility of it is going to be well below the price of already established canoes that are similar to this, that haven't even got these features and the kit to come with it. So everything's going to be included to get you out on the water. And for those that are interested in acquiring the Maverick Explorer, from experienced canoeists to anybody that really wants to get out on the waters, whether you're already out there fishing, leisurely pursuits, wild camping, bushcrafting, all that sort of thing, this canoe I've tried to make as versatile as possible, with potential for people to amend it, to actually have connections, to actually make their own shelters if they wanted to, a sun canopy on top, and also to extend this transom bench so it goes over the side, so you can then clamp a trolling motor to it. So then you can actually sit on the bench, so one can either connect the two together, have one going through, and then clamped the second one on top so it protrudes over the edge of the gunnel. So then your trolling motor goes over the side. Plus as well, people might actually want to build a frame which is sturdy to be able to fit on there, and I'll be giving more information on maybe how you can do that in the near future, where you can then actually have a petrol motor at the back from an actual transom plate, which actually can be constructed because it's strong enough to actually take it, and then it's operable from someone sitting sort of near the rear end, near to the motor. So all these things have been considered to make it as versatile as possible. So I'll end on this point saying thanks for watching, really appreciate your interest, and catch you in another video soon. Cheers.